Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the wild jungle of personal finance. We're going to uncover exactly why, despite working so incredibly hard, it just feels totally impossible to get ahead. Seriously, if you've ever stared at your bank account at the end of the month and thought, wait, where did it all go? Well, you're definitely in the right place.
So, let's just kick things off with the ultimate question, right? Why do you keep working day in and day out, but your wallet or, your pile of leaves just stays completely empty?
This little quote brilliantly illustrates our core rule for today. In our jungle metaphor, leaves are money and bananas are goods. And the whole shebang is driven entirely by the simple, classic laws of supply and demand. Think about it. If there is literally only one banana, it's rare. And if it's rare, it suddenly becomes highly valuable.
To really grasp this, we got to separate the two concepts. Leaves, that's fiat currency. They're controlled, they're printed by the monkey bank, which means their supply can theoretically be endless. But bananas, on the other hand, well, they represent real, tangible value. They're the actual things you want to consume, own, or use to actually survive and thrive out there.
Welcome to the jungle. Let's look at the fundamental baseline of this economy and that daily trap most apes eventually find themselves in.
Making 100 leaves feels amazing, right up until you actually visit the banana store. It's kind of what we call the rich monkey illusion. See, if your wages stay exactly the same at 100 leaves, but banana prices shoot up by 20% over a year, your real purchasing power has totally plummeted. You are effectively getting poorer every single month, even though your paycheck literally hasn't changed at all. Crazy, right?
Section 2. Borrowing leaves and debt. This brings us to a really crucial point. How exactly monkeys try to survive this painful squeeze by swiping leaf cards and borrowing money they just don't actually have.
You know, when a monkey wants to buy a banana house, they almost never have all the leaves up front. So what do? They sign a mortgage with the monkey bank. Now, what is actually darkly fascinating here is that the word mortgage, hilariously and kind of terrifyingly, translates from its original roots to a literal death pledge. Yep, you are locked in, paying the bank back with interest for up to 30 long years. And oh boy, it gets riskier. Borrowing leaves to invest, which we call leverage, is literally like playing with fire. You're using the bank's leaves to buy more bananas, aggressively hoping the price keeps going up. But if the banana market even just wiggles downward by a tiny fraction, boom! You lose all your own leaves and end up deeply in debt to the bank.
It's sad, but young apes often fall into this exact trap right out of the gate. They take on an absolute mountain of student loan debt just to, learn fancy big brain words. They do it hoping for a higher nominal wage, but so often they just end up trapped. They want to scream, "I declare bankruptcy," when the math simply doesn't add up, and they realize there's no way they can pay the bank back.
Moving on to Section 3, booms, bubbles, and aping. This right here is what happens when desperate monkeys try to get rich quick, which leads to just absolute market mania. Practically every financial bubble follows this exact timeline. First up, discovery. Some fascinating new thing comes out. Then, mania hits. Monkeys start buying purely out of FOMO, that fear of missing out, rapidly pumping prices way beyond what a banana is actually worth. Then comes the inevitable panic. And finally, the crash, where all that artificial value just completely evaporates into thin air.
Now, keep in mind, not every new thing is a bubble, right? A true breakthrough, like electricity, actually kept monkeys warm and gave them light. But take a look at the current AI bubble. You've got this smart monkey that draws fake art with way too many fingers, drinks an absurd amount of water to cool its massive servers, and doesn't actually generate any real leaves of its own yet. It's just pure hype driving the price.
In the finance world, we call this aping. It is pure, unfiltered herd behavior. You see your neighbor get a flashy new banana car, so you just buy in without doing any actual research yourself. This kind of herd mentality, combined with cheap loans from the monkey bank, who are basically acting like King Kong with a giant air pump, creates this incredibly volatile hype cycle that is, for sure, absolutely destined to explode.
All right, Section 4, the inevitable banana crash. All of this hype builds to that one inevitable moment when monkeys suddenly realize, wait, bananas actually do just grow on trees. And that's when the massive panic selling begins.
Get a load of this number, 16 million. That is the staggering amount of bananas dumped on Black Tuesday alone. It was absolute sheer panic in the markets, and it kicked off the devastating 1929 Great Banana Depression. The bubble, my friends, had officially burst. The fallout? Absolutely catastrophic. At the peak of the crash, an unbelievable 24.9% of monkeys, that is literally 1 in 4 apes in the entire jungle, were completely unemployed. And without leaves to pay back all those death pledges and leverage traps, over 4,000 monkey banks completely collapsed.
This triggers a seriously vicious recession cycle. Once the bubble bursts, you get a massive economic shock. Monkeys get scared, so they immediately start spending less. Because they spend less, businesses make less profit and, well, they're forced to fire workers. Then those fired workers have no leave, so they spend even less. It creates this brutal death loop that just slows the entire gross domestic product down to an absolute crawl.
Section 5. Surviving the Invisible Thief. Look, even if you somehow manage to keep your job through the crash and successfully navigate the recession, you still have to battle the final boss of the monkey economy, the silent killer known as inflation.
Banana prices generally skyrocket for 4 specific reasons. First, demand pull. Suddenly everyone wants the bananas. Second, cost push. There are just fewer bananas available. Third, production cost. Things like banana seeds and fertilizer suddenly cost more. And lastly, monetary. This one can actually end in absolute hyperinflation if the monkey government prints so many leaves to pay off their own mounting debts that the leaves become completely worthless. At that point, they're essentially forcing the whole jungle to just switch back to trading sticks.
And cost-push inflation is especially fragile. For instance, what happens if, say, pirate monkeys decide to block the bendy bit of Hormuz? Because 20% of the world's banana exports go through this one tiny, narrow geographic gap, a single bottleneck right there causes massive global shortages. And that wildly drives up the cost of literally everything across the entire jungle.
Now, when those costs go up, guerrilla corporations love to mask this inflation through some pretty sneaky stealth tactics. We call it shrinkflation. They'll charge you the exact same leaf, but they only give you half a banana peel. Or maybe they mix in cheap coconuts instead of real bananas. Or they just release totally useless product sequels. It's all designed to quietly squeeze every last leaf out of your wallet without ever actually raising that sticker price.
So to stop this madness and cool down that burning inflation, the monkey central bank steps in and finally taps the brakes. They do this by raising interest rates, which instantly makes borrowing those leaves way more expensive. And yeah, this successfully slows down the economy because apes stop taking out business loans. But the catch, it runs the massive risk of triggering yet another full-blown recession cycle.
So, how do you actually make it through all of this? Well, to survive the jungle, everyday apes absolutely must diversify their assets. You can't just hold on to leaves. You need a well-structured survival portfolio. Basically, that means spreading your wealth out, something like 50% in steady index funds, 30% in tangible bananas, maybe 10% in alternative assets like coconuts just to hedge against disaster, and holding only about 10% in liquid leaves.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer today. Next time you get paid, I want you to look at your leaves and ask yourself this really crucial question. Are your leaves actually working for you, or are you just working for bananas? Because truly understanding the mechanics of this jungle game, that's the only way you're ever going to finally win it. So what's your next move going to be? Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.